Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing another collection video, which I have not done in a very long time. But today I'll be showcasing my comic book collection, composing primarily of Batman comics, though you'll see at the end I've got a few other series there. So I guess I'll just be going through one by one, giving a few thoughts on each book, and kind of summarizing my collection as a whole. So let's start off from the very left. Now, you may be wondering how I organize this collection, and to me, the way I've done it is pretty much from here onwards is all in chronological order, and then to the left of that, I have my Elseworlds or non-canon books. So starting with Kingdom Come, which is quite a fun one, although it probably didn't quite live up to my expectations, but was still good nonetheless. It's about a kind of a future of the DC universe with the heroes are old, which you'll notice is a running theme in these Elseworlds books. But you get to see the heroes in a bit of a different environment. It's all told from this perspective of this non-powered, unrelated old man, and his views of kind of the kind of civil war between the humans, like the powered humans, amongst each other and everyone else. So yeah, it was decent. Next up, the first of my omnibus. I do have my omnibus just mixed in with my regular books, just because, again, I'm going for more of a complete Batman timeline, which is really my goal with my collection. But this one was actually really good. Although admittedly it started to go a bit downhill later on, but yeah, really, as you'll find out if you read it, the kind of the whole premise is just trying to combine, combine both continuity and the history of DC to create one cohesive storyline. So I would actually highly recommend that. Next up, Joker and Batman Damned, both by Brian Azzarello. I wasn't the hugest fan of these ones. Joker was alright, but it's a bit of a basic Joker storyline. If you know anything about Joker, you've probably experienced all that before. And Batman Damned, yeah, it just wasn't all that exciting of a book to me. But moving right on again. Next up, The Dark Knight Returns. Now that is a classic book by Frank Miller. Again, old Batman, but really tells a very interesting tale. Like if you're into Batman at all, or even if you've never read Batman, that is really one of the ones that you got to start off with a read. And right next to that is The Dark Knight Strikes Again, which is I don't know what Frank Miller was thinking writing in that book. The storyline, the artwork, all just completely. It does not live up to the original. I'll just say that much. Next up, The Brave and the Bold, Omnibus 3. You may be wondering, why do I only have the third one when, there's 3 whole omnibus? In this case, this one on Amazon, $40. The rest of the series, $100 to $150 each. I just kind of basically picked it up on a whim. It was a good price. And let me be honest, it was a damn good book. Even as someone who's read very little of the pre-crisis comics, it was really easy to get into. Obviously, those older comics primarily tell self-contained storylines. And in that regard, yeah, that was really good. And it kind of gives you a little introduction and preview into a whole bunch of DC characters who just aren't that prevalent today, which was actually really helpful in understanding the next book, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, obviously, this one also may not be as much of a Batman book per se, but a very essential book to the timeline of the DC universe, really the start of the modern era. And yeah, and in fact, in my case, reading it right after Brave and the Bold was actually really interesting because it uses a lot of really obscure heroes from the past and uses them all in this one storyline about the Monitor, the Anti-Monitor, and the end of the multiverse as we know it. Next up, Batman Year One, also by Frank Miller, same author as Dark Knight Returns that we just showed off a second ago. This one really is like the quintessential Batman origin story, in my opinion. It's got a lot of Commissioner Gordon stuff, a lot of Batman stuff, and really just establishes the world to new readers. That was actually one of my first Batman books and what really got me into Batman as a whole, so that is an essential book as well if you're wanting to get into Batman. Next up, Batman by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale Omnibus. This one is one that I got fairly recently, actually, containing the Haunted Night, Long Halloween, Dark Victory, and Catwoman When in Rome graphic novels, which is essentially one series, obviously, by those two authors, um, telling the tale of Batman fighting against Holiday, who's a mysterious killer who kills once each holiday of the year. So that was actually a really great one. Um, it was released a bit later on compared to these other books, but it kind of went back, told a very early Batman story. I mean, a lot of Batman characters are just being introduced in that, or don't even exist yet. So it is another really good one. Admittedly, I wish I'd read it earlier on, which is why I've placed it there on the timeline. But still a very, very good book, and probably one of my favorites. Next up, The Killing Joke. Speaking of favorites, this is another just classic, essential book to the Batman story. What happens if you have one bad day? In the Joker's case, it was one really bad day, and it did not turn out very well. But another really great book, and in fact, right next to it, I have Batman: The Killing Joke in French. No more explanation needed. So next up, A Death in the Family, a tragic book in the Batman timeline about the death of Jason Todd, the second Robin. It is again, it's like a bit of an older one, but it's still a really great tale. One of the better ones from kind of the older part of Batman's history, and especially that scene, if you know of Batman holding Jason Todd. In fact, you can kind of see it on the spine right there. That the whole build up to that, and then that moment, and then even the stuff that happens after, and then obviously the introduction of the next Robin. It's just really tragic and emotional, and a great Batman story. Next up, Batman Hush. That was actually one of the earlier ones that I read as well. It really does a great job of like incorporating all of the Batman characters, all of the Rogues Gallery, pretty much everyone you can know related to Batman into one storyline, and makes for a really enjoyable read. So, again, if you're newer to Batman, that is a definite must read. Next up, Identity Crisis. Again, this is more of a DC crossover book, probably more of a Justice League type book, if anything, but it still is pretty important to the Batman timeline, and the overall feel of the book especially. It is a detective murder mystery storyline, and it really, even if Batman's not that prevalent in it, it really feels like a Batman book to me. And there are some pretty important things that happen to Robin in that one. So again, really quite a good book in my opinion. And if you want to learn more about my thoughts on that and Crisis on Infinite Earths, you can go to my channel section and have a look at my reviews for each of those books where I delve deeper into my thoughts on those. Next up, Batman and Son, the start of Grant Morrison's Batman run, of which I have almost everything. The introduction of Damian Wayne, the fourth Robin, and even if at the time people didn't really like Damian Wayne, I've got to say, as you'll see from looking at the rest of my collection, I've come to really love the character. He starts off very aggressive, untamed, like which you would expect given his mother's Talia al Ghul. But over time, he develops as a character. He and Batman bond more, but a really cool introduction there. Then the resurrection of Ra's al Ghul, which is really it was an all right one, although it was mostly good in the sense that it brought back Ra's al Ghul again. Although the storyline itself wasn't all that exciting. Then Batman Rip and Final Crisis, those two telling kind of the tale of, or especially Final Crisis, telling a tale of Batman's death, which you wouldn't expect to happen, but it does, at least temporarily, in Final Crisis, which I must say is an incredibly confusing book, or at least it was to me as I was reading it, but definitely showcases all of Grant Morrison's strengths and was quite an enjoyable read overall. Once I got through the understanding of it. Next up is Batman: Battle for the Cowl, taking place immediately after Batman's demise. That one kind of has all of the characters of the Batman universe vying to take the next position. And as you'll see from the next book, Batman and Robin, good old Dick Grayson takes up the mantle of Batman at the end of Battle for the Cowl. And that brings me to Batman and Robin, Batman vs. Robin, and Batman and Robin Must Die. 3 of the 4 books in that Batman and Robin series, although the 3 that Grant Morrison worked on, I really enjoyed those ones as well. In fact, if anything, those were probably my favorite of the Batman storyline under Grant Morrison, partially just because I really liked Dick Grayson as a character, and I thought he was a really good Batman. And in the middle there is the return of Bruce Wayne, which is another one I really loved. It sees Batman, or Bruce Wayne in this case, traveling through time, going to each time period, and we get to see him in Western setting, caveman setting, pirate setting. It definitely harkens back more to the earlier golden silver age of comic books, but it was a really fun one and a great way to reintroduce Batman following his death in Final Crisis. Now, you may notice something about these books here, which is that they are a hardcover collection and they make up part of a picture. That they are actually Eaglemoss books, which, as of the recording of this video, actually went bankrupt a few weeks ago and filed for administration, which kind of screwed over me because I may have had a couple more orders with them, but I've got to say they really are nice quality books. So it's a little sad that the company has gone out of business. And so that brings me to the end of my pre-New 52 comics and the start of the New 52. Now, you may notice I don't have Batman Incorporated there. I have read that and a few of the other Batman books from around that time, but unfortunately I read them during a period where I wasn't collecting physical books, so I don't actually have them physically as of right now. But yeah, they were really good, and obviously the tragedy at the end of Batman Incorporated really has a lot of further effects later on. Now, in the middle here, I've got a bit of an interlude with Batwoman, the Omnibus, and Volume 6. I am actually missing Volume 5 to have the complete kind of Batwoman timeline from her beginning in Detective Comics all the way through to the end of the New 52. And I guess I don't have her in the 52 either, but I've got to say, I really loved the Batman Omnibus. Like, before reading it, I'd only heard bad things, I guess mainly from the TV show, but the book itself was really good, actually. And it doesn't tie too directly into the Batman stuff, but it definitely helps broaden your understanding of, like, the Batman universe and the understanding of the greater Bat family. And it's got some damn good stories in there too. Next up, getting to the Batman section of the New 52. Starting off with Batman and Robin, I have all 7 books just there. With the first one, the Essential Edition. But those, the Batman and Robin series, again, just like the pre-New 52 one, I've got to say, I really love Batman and Robin. I think just something about the dynamic of the two of them together really makes for an enjoyable series, and especially Batman and Robin Bad Blood, the first volume. That one just tells a really great, like, single volume story with Damian and Bruce, and kind of shows their relationship together, connecting as father and son. It's a really great one. And obviously, the events of Batman Incorporated have a pretty grand effect in the series about the midpoint with Requiem for Damian, kind of serving as a really tragic kind of aftermath of those events, with an entire issue being entirely silent. And that one is really just the tragedy and the heartbreak that you can see in Bruce's eyes. It really makes an emotional read. Next up is the Batman by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo Omnibus, both Volume 1 and Volume 2. You'll see there that Volume 2 is still in plastic, and that is because I have not actually read that yet. I've read Volume 1, and I've started on Batman Eternal, but I have not gotten finished that, so that is kind of my next stage of my Batman reading order. But I've got to say, I actually am not the biggest fan of the Scott Snyder stuff, which may be a bit blasphemous to some Batman fans, But the quality of ours was quite decent, and Bruce's brother being revealed, well, brother in quotes, but the rest of it, the death and the death of the family, and Zero Year, I've got to say I didn't actually enjoy them all that much. Particularly Zero Year, I was a bit disappointed by, because it definitely felt like they were trying to tie together all the different pieces of the Batman mythology together into creating like a new origin and new like retelling of the early stages of Batman's life, with all the Red Hood gang and everything. But I don't know. There's something about it. Just didn't click with me all that much, and I don't want to say Greg Capullo's art is bad because it's certainly not. It's really great artwork, but I don't know, something about it, about the roundness of it all, just doesn't really fit with Batman in my eyes. That's not to say I don't enjoy it at all, but just compared to some of the other stuff, I've got to say I was a bit disappointed. Next up, moving along, I have just two single issues of one of Batman Rebirth and one of the first issue of Batman and Superman. That is because obviously I'm not up to the collecting that stage of the Batman lore. I've read a bit of the Rebirth stuff, but obviously I've primarily read through the New 52 and before then. But that will be my next stage. Then we've got Three Jokers by Geoff Johns. This one was kind of interesting in that it does what Grant Morrison did actually over here, kind of again telling the way that the Joker kind of changes and evolves over time. But it was all right, and it was a pretty good Joker story. But it kind of didn't really do anything particularly noteworthy compared to what's been done before. Um, and also the canonicity of it is a little questionable. I mean, as far as I'm aware, it's never been confirmed if it actually is part of the current Batman storyline. Now, next up is a couple more books that I have gotten recently. These ones are actual single issues, mainly the 4 issues of Batman Death Mask, and the 4 issues of... Oh, that's still Death Mask. Where is it? Of Batman Gordon's Law. I got these ones because they were quite cheap and they looked in like enjoyable miniseries. But I actually haven't gotten around to reading them. But particularly Death Mask I'm looking forward to because obviously the concept of a Batman manga is quite novel, and I do really love my manga, so I'm interested to see how they kind of merge those two worlds. Next up is my non-Batman section, starting off with my Superman by Grant Morrison omnibus. This one I got because of, I guess, the connection of Grant Morrison, given I'd read all of his Batman stuff, and also because it kind of retells the origin story of Superman, just like the Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo omnibus did. Retells it for the New 52, and I did enjoy that part of the story. I thought it was good overall, although the second half was a bit weaker than the first half, in my opinion. But obviously, I don't have the rest of the Superman New 52 runs, so I can't judge the run as a whole. But based on what I read in that, it was really good. But I would like to read a bit more before I make a full judgment. Next up is the New Teen Titans, number 9. This one I got because I bought in here a single issue of the New Teen Titans quite a long time ago, and I wanted to kind of read that in the context of the full series. And in fact, Volume 9 is actually the start of the kind of rebooted New Teen Titans. They started the numbering again, so it's a fairly good jumping on place. Although, again, I would like to go back and read the rest of the series if possible. Next up is my one Marvel book, which is X-Men Wolverine / Gambit. I got this one because I'm quite a big fan of the X-Men films, and it is by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, the same creators of Batman The Long Halloween, and Jeff Loeb also did Batman Hush. It was quite a good one. Again, it's just a single self-contained story. Bit of a detective story. It's somewhat similar to the Batman stuff, although also incorporating both Wolverine and Gambit's relationship to other characters. Next up is this Marvel Monograph, which is just a nice art book. It's not a comic book per se, but it has a lot of pictures of comic book panels. And it's actually a very nice quality book just for looking at some artwork of, it's got all the characters, Iron Man, Spider-Man, quite a lot of variety of Marvel characters. Next up is Dynamite's The Last Phantom Ghostwalk. This one is a Phantom book, which I have read a number of issues of. Nothing really in particular that I have read. I just kind of have read random ones, mostly because my dad is actually a fan of the Phantom, so I kind of picked up the interest from him. Next up, I've got a few single issues from the Free Comic Book Day, I think 2019. So Pokemon one, and My Hero Academia, and I think over here there's an Avengers one. Yep, Avengers. And then the other side is the War of the Realms, which now is probably a good time to mention that, obviously, what I have here is all of my physical books, but I have read quite a lot of digital comics as well. Particularly, I've read all of the Jason Aaron Thor run. I've read a lot of Swamp Thing. And there's a lot of great digital comics I've read. Though if I could get them in physical, I certainly would. But yeah, and then at the end is a DC superheroes pop-up book. Just a nice, fun book. And Batman, The Ultimate Guide to the Dark Knight, which I think is a 2011 book, which I got at the time that it came out, and kind of summarizes Batman's storyline up until about the kind of early to mid 2000s stuff. So about where I started reading, which was quite a nice way to kind of bring me up to speed on a lot of the Batman stuff. And so that is about it. Aside from this, I have also got a few Flash comics, particularly Flashpoint, but I kind of store them separately. And yeah, that's about all of my physical comics. So, tell me what you guys thought of my Batman collection. I hope you all liked looking at it. There's definitely plenty more room for me to expand it out and get a whole bunch more Batman comics in the future. Particularly, I'm looking forward to reading through the rest of New 52, and I would love to read the Rebirth books at some stage soon. And of course, I would like to fill out some earlier stuff, potentially get the rest of the Brave and the Bold, because that is quite a fun series, and just get some in-between volumes that will just fill out my Batman reading experience. So, thank you all so much for watching. If you would like to see more videos, make sure to like and subscribe. I hope to do more collection tours and other related videos in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you all later.